A parting well made. Presented by Stillafrog.
The Atlanta airport, middle of Concourse A, top of the escalators, literally the crossroads of America, if not the world. She was finally going home, absolutely dreading it and simultaneously aching to get back to her own place. She'd ended it with him more than 2 months ago, although she wasn't even sure why. He checked off almost all the boxes. It wasn't that she wasn't feeling it for him. She knew the feeling of not feeling it all too well. It was more like she was fighting something within herself, although she had no idea what. And then one day, just wanting to hear a friendly voice, his voice, actually, she'd called him. It wasn't the first time. She'd rung him once or twice before, but this time, for some reason, she'd opened up about the monotony of her life at present. The drab sameness that seemed to define it of late. Same relentless summer heat, same oppressive humidity, same people at work with the same problems, same kind of guys in the dishearteningly shallow dating pool. Pool. Whoever coined that term was colossally stupid. She'd seen foot baths in a nail salon that were deeper, and the men in her pool seemed to have become indistinguishable from one another, which was part of the reason she'd begun watching too much television, mostly boring and predictable shows, except for one series set in the English countryside. She described it to him, told him how lovely she thought the setting was. And out of the blue, he suggested they go there. Together, his treat. Now. They'd never traveled anywhere out of the country when they were an on-again, off-again, semi-sort of couple. But despite the vagueness of their situationship, she told him very early on, not completely joking, that anytime you want to buy me jewelry, you can, and anytime you want to take me somewhere, my bags are packed. So when he'd suggested this trip during their phone call, she hadn't hesitated. And they had an amazing time. Honestly, England itself proved to be a bit of a blur. She told him just before they left that her family was among the very first who came to America from Ireland in the 1600s. He then suggested they take a train through England, followed by a ferry across the Irish Sea to Dublin, and she thought it was a wonderful idea. On the second day there, they'd driven westward, across to the wild Atlantic coast, on the wrong side of tiny 2-lane roads with stone walls just inches from her elbow. They stood on the cliffs, the cold wind cutting through them, as they looked down on the heavy surf crashing into the rocks far below. Imagine, she thought, the kind of fortitude it took for her ancestors to board a leaky wooden vessel for a 6-week journey, across several thousand miles of open ocean to a wild, unsettled land. Why did they do it? The pursuit of a dream? Or was it the realization that they had nothing to lose, so why not risk their lives? She was deep in her own thoughts when, as if reading her mind, he spoke of the same thing. From the very beginning, he often seemed to sense what she was feeling. He, too, talked about the strength of those who had embarked on the journey centuries before. And he quietly pointed out that the same spirit was hard-coded into her DNA. It touched her deeply. It was a moment that she'd long remember. And it was that moment that came to mind in the Atlanta airport as he walked her to her gate, and they kissed goodbye before parting ways for what would surely be the last time. As they held each other, neither of them wanting to let go, he whispered in her ear, "The trip was perfect, but I don't think it changed anything between us. I don't think we've gotten back together." It was, however, a poetic way to end, far better than the way we did it 2 months ago. It was Shakespeare. We know not what the morrow comes, but come it will. So if we ever see one another again, we shall smile. And if we do not, then this parting was well made. "That's beautiful," she said. "Was that from Romeo and Juliet?" Actually, it was Cassius, or Brutus, one of them, when the conspirators were plotting to murder Caesar. "Well, that certainly puts it in a different light," she sighed. "Not really," he smiled. It was a turning point at which each man's life was irrevocably changed forever, a defining moment in every sense of the word. And that's precisely what this is. Each of us is about to launch into the future with no idea what it will hold. Will we live out our lives alone? Will one or both of us find a soulmate? Or is it maybe even remotely possible that years from now, some ironic twist of fate will bring us together again, and we'll finish our time on this earth as a couple, in love forever? Is there a happy ever after for us? Or are we destined to be single for the duration? Like Cassius or Brutus or whoever it was, we know not. You make it sound so romantic and frightening, and you make me feel like I want to write a poem or burst into tears. It is frightening, he said, and romantic, and it's worth shedding a few tears over. But your plane is boarding. I have a long walk. I'm 3 concourses away. And yes, this parting was indeed well made. With that, he kissed her once more and headed for his flight. She was sitting with her mother at lunch the day after she got home, telling her all about the trip, when good old Mom casually said, "Why don't you marry him?" "Sounds like you should marry him," she shot back. "I already did," her mother replied, "almost 60 years ago." "Oh, please, he's different from my father in every imaginable way." "Except one," Mom said. "Spirit. He has the same spirit. The spirit that your father had until he died. And I think that may be the most important thing in life. You were married for 2 decades to a man who did not have it. And he was a good man, but those years nearly killed you. That's why you had to get a divorce. But with him, it's different. Every time we ever meet somewhere, the 2 of you come in holding hands, and when you leave, each of you instinctively reaches for the other one. I don't know if that means anything, but it seems important. So maybe, just maybe, like that country song, you were meant to walk through this world hand in hand." She thought for a moment, stood up and walked outside to call him. "Hi," she said when he answered. "I've been thinking about that last goodbye at the Atlanta airport, and, well, I've changed my mind." "You? Changed your mind? I'm shocked." He laughed. "Oh, shut up," she said. She was laughing too. Shared spontaneous laughter had been a defining characteristic of their relationship from day one, even sometimes in the middle of their worst fights. "I've decided that I can't go back to the way we were," she continued. "It just wasn't enough, and I want more." "I know that," he replied. "You said that when we split up." "Just listen," she went on. "Stop jumping to conclusions." "I'm not jumping to conclusions," he replied. "I'm making reasonable assumptions about the future based on what's actually happened in the past." "Well, don't," she said, almost laughing again. "Just listen. I want us to be exclusive, just the 2 of us, committed to each other, as a couple. I want to get a big house with plenty of room for our kids to visit, where we can live together and take care of each other. What do you think?" "I think this is the moment I've been waiting for since the first time we met," he said.